Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. I'm so excited about the guest today. And you probably know I say that all the time, but no, I am seriously excited. We've actually got a real doctor today. Now, I love psychology as to why people buy things, why salespeople do things when asked them to do it, and sometimes they don't. I love to know the psychology about what makes people tick. I suppose I'm a bit of a people watcher, and maybe you are as well. But today, I've got Dr. Tharaka Gunaratha. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your surname right there, Doctor, but actually, I'm so excited to get the real ideas as to why people do what they do or why they don't do it. So, Dr. Tharaka, did I pronounce your surname right? Tharaka, is that right?
So Tharaka, that's my first name, and that was pretty much right. Gunaratha is my surname, and to be honest, people within my family forget, so we've left that out. So it's Dr. T for short.
Dr. T. Okay. Tharaka, when you said I've got that almost right, Tharaka, Dr. Tharaka, I'm going to try to get that right. Thank you very much there. Listen, Dr. Tharaka, I understand you're a TEDx speaker. Okay, you're a podcaster. Some of you guys may have heard of Dr. Tharaka with Channel 4's Can I Improve My Memory? Go and find that. Go and have a look at some of these TEDx speeches there because they're really, really good. Okay. I suppose you talk lots about manage your mind and you can manage your bottom line. But can I ask you a question? This is a podcast about the motor trade and selling in the motor trade. So people are going to want to know, what's the first car that you bought?
Great question. My first car that I bought was actually a Volkswagen Golf Mark II in red. Bought it secondhand from a nice couple in the hills of Scotland somewhere. I was about 18, 19 years old, and I got into the car with my dad. I think he was driving a Vauxhall Cavalier, very old Vauxhall Cavalier at the time. And we drove off into the hills and bought this secondhand VW and brought it back. It kind of hobbled its way back, Simon, and we had to do so many repairs on it. And back in the day, my dad was very sort of pro, I'll just do everything myself. So the car spent half its life on 4 pillars of bricks getting no other changed. But it was great, and it got me to medical school and back most days. And yeah, what a fun car to have.
Well, listen, got you to medical school. I've got to ask you, tell us about your journey. Okay, you're a medical doctor, and now you're doing high performance coaching and dealing with high top end performance in lots of different industries. How does that happen? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, well, Simon, it was kind of by accident. I didn't plan it, as many of these things go. I've been a medical doctor for 15 years. And through that journey, I specialized in medicine of the mind. So hence I'm a psychiatrist. So I made it to consultant level psychiatry. And part of the reason for falling into that path, that stream of medicine, I think is from my experiences as a child, because many people in my own family, Simon, around me were struggling with mental health problems. So I kind of developed as a practical psychologist. I sort of got people, understood the importance of communication and feelings and all that kind of stuff. And so that really shone and carried me through medical school, and it helped me select that path of psychiatry. But to cut a long story short, whilst I was a consultant psychiatrist, practicing consultant psychiatrist, I saw the offer of a TEDx talk pop up on one of the global emails that got shot around the department. And I thought, hey, you know what? I feel like that's for me. I feel like I should apply for that. I did. And that conference was themed shifting perspectives. And I thought, hey, you know what? Like, I kind of do that as a mental health professional. I have to help people see things differently in order for them to experience a bit of a recovery. If you're depressed, for example, or if you've got depressive patterns of thinking, keeping those patterns of thinking can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so that becomes a bit of a downward spiral. But by shifting your perspective, you give your chance to work your way in another direction. So anyway, I thought, hey, I could do that. So I did that in 2016, and then a few TED Talks later, I find myself bringing a message to the working world: when you manage the mind, you can manage your bottom line.
It really is. It's one of the parts that in the motor trade, I've got to say, sometimes we've been, we've just left it out. It's like, where are the numbers, what we achieved, where we're up to. Okay, just do the job. Hey, listen, in your time then, you've clearly worked with lots of high performance people. You've met with people, they just win and win all the time. I'm guessing you must deal with some people that they always seem to struggle in some part of their life. Can I ask you, what is the mindset difference between someone that seems to go from win to win to someone that seems to go from loss to loss?
I love the question. And I think it's so important when you work with someone in a coaching setting or with a team to help them define, well, what does winning look like for you? Because often our top of mind impression of winning might look like numbers. It might look like profits. It might be the number of cars that we've sold. It might be the promotion, the tangible, very sort of commonplace wins in our mind. But winning can sometimes also look like, and my well-being is good, or I'm sleeping well, or I'm getting time with my kids, my relationship with my partner's restored. And so when I'm doing work with folk who want to win, we start there. And I get into what I call the 11 growth areas. I've defined 11 growth areas that I think that if you manage all of these different accounts of your life well, you're winning in general. Because you hear stories, don't you, Simon, of CEOs that have absolutely crushed it in business and managed to take their company from where they are to light years ahead, but they neglected the health, but they neglected their relationship, but they're lonely, whatever, so there's so many different facets. So I would define that first, but does that make sense? Is that a good
Yeah, it does.
even before I get into the answer?
No, of course it does. Okay, winning is in all parts of your life. It's not just in bottom line. Okay, you need to win in all parts of it for the bottom line to make sense. I suppose that's what you're driving at.
Yeah. So the bottom line is actually, it's code for actually what matters to you. So bottom line, of course, can be your financial bottom line, but we have multiple bottom lines in life that matter to us. So it can be well-being, it can be your health, it can be your relationships, it can be your free time, your time freedom, your relationship freedom, your travel freedom, all that kind of stuff, all these different freedoms to experience in life. And so when you manage the mind, you position yourself to manage your bottom line, is the short way of putting it, or expand the bottom lines in life that matter to you. And so that's, and I've learned that as a mental health professional. There's so much that's connected to your mind, not only your performance, but things like your neurotransmitter activity in your brain, your susceptibility to viral illnesses, even how likable you are, which can predict how embedded in relationships or lonely you are in life. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. But circling back to your question then of what's the difference between someone that's win and someone that's struggling. There can be healthy reasons and there can be unhealthy reasons. So that's a caveat I'll just put aside real quick. And that is that, believe it or not, you're going to have clusters of personality traits that when coupled together in a human being can almost pathologically drive them towards success. Okay. So what I mean by that is they're hitting the numbers and they're climbing the ladder, but at the same time, people are just commodities to me. If you're valuable to me, I keep you. If you're not, I get rid of you. Okay. And so the winning comes at another kind of an expense, and that can be social. But that aside, the pathological winning aside, if we think about people that are doing well, yeah, your mindset's got a lot to do with it. And I'll just be simple. Henry Ford said, if you think that you can, you can. And if you think that you can't, you can't. Maybe let's open that up.
I love that. Henry Ford, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. It's so true, isn't it?
Right.
Hey, listen, I want to get your views then, moving forward then, on the subconscious mind. We say in the motor trade that you get a car salesperson. So many times they sell a car, and then straight after they sell a car, the best time to sell a car is straight after you've done it, because you still got that buzz. There's that spring in your step. So they do that first deal on a Saturday morning. It's a full up deal. Then they go and speak to the next customer. Now that customer buys, and Dr. Tharaka, they turn around and say, I can't believe I bought a car today. I just popped out to get a brochure. And in their mind, they say, yes, get in there. They've now got more of a spring in their step. They come out to the next customer, and that customer says, to be fair, you're the first place I've been. I'm just looking. That goes in one ear and out the other. And because they're on that roll, they sell them a car. And then we say in the motor trade, when everyone they speak to turns to gold, we call it the Midas touch. You know, the mythical Greek god, king, or was it god or a king? King Midas, I think it was. Everything that touch turns to gold.
Right.
But actually, the same thing happens in reverse. Everyone you spoke to is turned to crap, okay? I mean, they do a deal, okay? They sell them a car, and then that customer fails on finance. And you see salespeople, their heads drop. We go into, we almost come down. The people who can't listen to this, they can't see it, we're dropping down there. That's what salespeople's body language, you see it written all over them. They go and speak to the next customer. They sell them a car. And then they can't get the car they want because the semiconductors, there's a worldwide shortage of them. They go into lower again. They sell the next car. And then one of their colleagues says, oh, that was my customer. They bought the last 4 cars. And they lose that deal. Actually, we call it the opposite of the Midas touch. Because if you spell that in reverse, it spells SADIMS. Right. And sometimes the mindset of that salesperson, when they're down in the SADIMS, it's really hard to get themselves out of that. So can I ask you, what is it? What can that salesperson do who's listening to this that's down in the SADIMS, in that dark place? Okay. What can they do to get back up to where everything they touch turns to gold? Is there anything specifically they could try?
Yeah, absolutely. A whole bunch of things. And, I maybe start by saying that, what goes on between the ears has a real impact on the actions that you take and the results that you achieve. What you think, what you believe, and what you assume has an impact on the magnitude of the actions that you take, the tenacity of the actions you take, and the results, the progress and profits that you make. Now, it's not a perfectly linear connection, mind, action, profit. There are lots of moving parts in it. But, as a rule of thumb, it's very, very helpful. What can you do if you're down in the dumps? Well, there are lots of things. Here's a top tip. Number one, you want to zoom out. Because often when you are so involved in getting that next win, we're very busy on the dance floor, as Royston Guest would say, very busy on the dance floor and not enough time on the balcony. So if you can zoom out and get on the balcony and change your perspective, you don't just see that one loss. You go, okay, 1 loss, but 10 wins. Okay, right. So in perspective, I'm still doing okay. You see, one of the things that gets us down is not what we think about the situation, but what we think about ourselves as a result of the situation. So it's not like, oh, they didn't buy. It's, oh, I'm a failure. That's the damaging thought. Do you see the difference? So you want to just stop, zoom out, and just get perspective, and then try and do a fair assessment on everything that's going on. Do an assessment on yourself. Do assessment on the person you spoke to, because maybe they just absolutely shouldn't have bought in that moment. Maybe the right thing for them was that they didn't buy. And maybe actually it was a good thing that in that moment that that the sale wasn't, it didn't materialize, because it's a no now for a bigger yes later, whatever. There may be lots of reasons. But it's important that you do a fair assessment of yourself, because if you start to self-criticize, that's fuel on the fire.
Don't we do that as humans normally? Don't we beat ourselves up? Yeah. If my best mate spoke to myself sometimes, the way I speak to myself, he wouldn't be my mate very long. Yeah. Is that a natural human trait sometimes?
Yeah, I think for many of us, it is. The good news is that we can train ourselves out of it. And you just hit the nail on the head, Simon. If my friends spoke to me like that, which I can't believe they would, then we wouldn't be friends. And I think what's interesting is that when we start to, and this might sound a bit fuddy-duddy, but if you just bear with me on this one, if we start to speak to ourselves like we would a friend, the language is very different. The language is very different. So, there are times where we're just pushing ourselves, we're tired, it's like, I can't do this anymore, but you keep doing it. But if it was a friend, you say, sit down, take a break, I'm gonna make you a cup of tea, shut the laptop, it can wait an hour. So we're shining kindness onto that person. They rejuvenate, and they're more powerful, they get their strength back, and then they go again. But for us, we just kind of, we just go and go and go and go. And so there's something about using our ability to talk to someone kindly as a friend, and use that self-kindness. But you're right, it's hard, right? Because we can be our own worst critic.
Yeah, that's good. So I want to circle back a little bit. You said something before, I didn't pick it up right. Mind, action, profit.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? So the mind, action, profit. Get the mind right first, then get the action, and then the profit. Can you expand on that for me? I like that approach.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So actually, we can improve our state of mind. So when I talk about the mind, I'm talking about what do you think, believe, and assume. So that's very cognitive, but also how do you feel? All right. So thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions, and emotional climate will have an effect on how you take action. So, for example, you don't make decisions the same when you're angry compared to when you're relaxed. You don't make decisions the same, or you don't communicate the same with people when you're anxious compared to when you feel, perfectly peaceful. And so our emotional climate has a big effect on muscle tension, body language, use of facial expressions, our tone of voice, everything. And all of these are micro data communications between person to person. So your emotional climate is one thing, but then also what you think, what you believe, and what your assumptions are have an effect on how you interact with someone. So for example, if you grew up fearing authority figures, let's just say you were raised that way, maybe you had a very critical teacher or a very critical parent or something like that. And so as a child, because your brain is very fertile, and by the way, your brain's 86 billion neurons in here. I'm holding up my half brain model here to you, Simon,
Yes.
which the viewers can see, but those who are on audio have no idea about what I'm doing.
How many billion did you say in there?
Yeah, 86 billion neurons in your brain, and you have trillions of connections between these neurons, and they're very fertile and moldable as a child. And so you're learning a lot about the world, life, and people. But let's just say you have this schema that authority figures are scary. And now you're 36 years old. You are a sales rep and or a sales exec on the shop floor, and someone walks in and just echoes the past for you. What does that do? It activates all those internal laws in the operating system and puts you into that very negative place. And so now the way I feel, the way I think, the way I assume about this person is very subjective and based on my experiences growing up, right? And so circling back to mind, action, profit, what you think, what you believe, and what you assume, coupled with how you feel, has a massive effect on how you interact with people and take actions.
Yeah, I suppose from a practical point of view, we just see salespeople all the time. If they go and speak to a teacher and that teacher was hard work and they didn't make a decision forever, okay, they immediately think the next teacher, they're going to be the same.
Yes.
Okay, that's not always the case at all.
Right.
But they think they're going to be that way just because of, hey, what flashes through their mind, I think, is that last teacher that was hard work. They never made a decision. Oh, here we go again, okay? That company car buyer, they're going to be a waste of space. But actually, not every company car buyer might be a waste of space.
Exactly. So a nice top tip for those that are listening in is to use what we call curiosity. Stay curious. Okay, be careful about the conclusions your brain forms about that one-off interaction you just had with somebody. But instead, if you stay curious, you walk away from that interaction, you go, I wonder why the conversation went like that. What was it about me? What was it about them? It might have been they had an argument with their partner before they came to the showroom. They had an argument in the car park. And, actually, that anger that I felt in that conversation wasn't even meant for me. It was for the partner. It was just projection. So again, by staying curious, we don't allow our brains to jump to conclusions, often negative ones, right? Oh, I suck as a salesperson. Oh, it was my fault. It might have been, but there could be other explanations. Let's just keep our mind open to that.
I suppose it works in the other way as well. I had a conversation with a salesperson Monday, said, I've got Eddie Expert. And now Eddie Expert in the motor trade is the customer that's hard work. They think they know everything. And this person was just, give me the best price. Don't deal with it that way. I just want to know what the numbers is. And there's a whole lot of negativity coming from the customer. I said, hold on, we got to put ourselves into the customer's shoes. Why is the customer like that? What experience have they had in the past? I said, hey, listen, if someone's like that, you may even try just turn and say, sir, I'm just trying to help you find the right cars for you. It almost sounds like you've had a tough time trying to buy a car in the past. Hey, what's happened? Because this person may have had a situation they felt they were ripped off in the past. They weren't dealt with in the right way. And once you know what the issue is, You say, sir, I know exactly where you're coming from. I understand how you feel. I'm going to make sure I'm not going to do that for you. And just struck home there that customers might feel that way as well.
It's what we call, in our world of psychotherapy, transference. So it's literally, I'm now bringing my historical interactions with another figure or person and transferring that into this current interaction I have with this person, because there's something about that person unconsciously even that's activating my mind for me to think that you're an echo. And so I'm literally now transferring a relationship dynamic I had with this other person into this here. And if the sales rep can pick that up and go, oh, you wouldn't necessarily speak this out loud, but if you're like, gosh, there's a lot, you seem very angry, or I feel like a failure right now. Like, where's that coming from? Oh, I think it's coming from the person that's just walked into this conversation with me. They're pointing the finger, but that's actually not about me. That's their story. Okay, right, I'm clean. I can keep going. So it's a useful skill.
Yeah, cool. I like that. Transference. Okay, I've not heard of it mentioned that way before. Listen, I'd love to get your views on the subconscious mind now. Okay, I've read some books. I'm sure you've read plenty of books to get to where you have, but I want to get your views on some books like I've heard Walt Disney said, whatever the subconscious mind can conceive and then believe, the conscious mind can then go and achieve. I think Napoleon Hill, in his book Think and Grow Rich, he talked lots about visualization. He talked lots about seeing exactly where he wanted to be and then working out what he had to do. Stephen Covey, or Dr. Stephen Covey, I think his was see, do, get. They're all talking about visualization. I want to get your views on visualization. Does it work? Is it a load of hocus pocus? Should we be doing that? Get your views on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I love this topic because it's connected to optimism and the neuroscience and the psychology of optimism. So in a sense, what visualization is, I'll pull this model of the brain out again. The visualization is a conversation between the front and the back of your brain. So behind your forehead, you have the CEO of your brain, the decision maker. This is the frontal lobe here in orange. And at the back here, if you just feel to the back of your skull, you can feel actually a skull-like nodule, a kind of sharpy, bony prominence. Do you feel that at the back of your head?
Yeah, I want to know how many people driving a car, listening to this podcast, are doing the same thing now. I hope you all are, because I definitely am. Be safe. Be safe.
Be safe for those of you driving a car or operating a chainsaw right now, or a power whisk. But yeah, there's a really sharp bit of skull at the back here. It's actually the thickest part of your skull. It protects your occipital lobe, which is where your visual cortex is. So this is the bit for seeing. Now, when I want to picture something in the screen of my mind, and this is an interesting side fact, but about 1% of the population do not have the capacity to picture things in their mind. They can't see.
Really?
Yes, and so visualization doesn't come naturally to them. But anyway, in the great majority, visualization is the CEO saying, I want to see, I want to see the Lamborghini on the driveway, let's just say, right? Okay, a young girl, a young boy's dream. Okay. And so what's happening there is that frontal lobe is talking to occipital lobe, because occipital lobe is starting to paint an image on the screen of your mind, which is where we get the word imagination from.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're using our imagination, painting an image on the screen of mind. What are we doing now? We are now picturing a version of the future. This is what we call optimism. Optimism is gratefulness for the future. Okay. So it's not about, technically gratefulness is my emotional response to the present. I'm grateful for the air I breathe, the food on my table, the shoes on my feet. I'm grateful for now. But if I can get excited about the future, I'm now practicing what we call optimism, which is I'm able to picture the future above what is actual. Okay. And so when we visualize, we're creating these images in the screen of our mind of what could the future look like? Not the actual, but the better than actual. This is optimism. Pessimism's the opposite, right? It's about picturing a future that's worse than the actual. Okay. Now, what we know is that what we visualize, especially when we practice it, is not only connected to success, but it drives success.
Okay.
So it's not even like an association. It's actually the more we visualize, the more we make our future a reality that we can see and believe, we're more likely to take action towards that. So it's mind, action, profit again. I think about it,
it is.
I believe it, I'm taking action. And just bouncing back to that question you asked earlier on today, Simon, you can work on mind and action both. You don't have, it's not one comes before the other, but in terms of what we're talking about right now, yes, of course. Like the more I condition my mind, the better my actions will follow.
So the more crystal clear I can make that vision, the more I can see it there, the more likely are you going to get your mind to put the action in to make it achievable. So it really is not hocus pocus. There is some real science behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's funny because we have access to it. Like we can actually, sports people will visualize, you know, actors, actresses, they'll visualize, they'll become their character in their mind. In fact, that's probably a really great example. So, you know, some of my friends are actors, and you know, literally I see the character, I become the character. Is a perfect example of what's going on in my mind becomes externalized in my action. So,
yeah, I love the Ian Thorpe. I was a swimmer growing up in Australia. Not a very good one, I might add. But I heard these stories all the time about how he'd shut his eyes beforehand. He'd listen to music because music takes us back to a point in our life when we think we were invincible. And he shuts his eyes and pictures the whole race. He pictures himself touching the end of the pool and seeing the exact time he wants to get. He plays the whole race in his mind beforehand. I know some of the Formula One drivers do exactly the same thing. They picture it beforehand. And I suppose I like the process that I think it was Walt Disney said, whatever the subconscious mind can conceive, but then believe, the conscious mind can go and achieve. So it's nice to know the science behind that. So can I ask you a question then? So
sure.
You're, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in your life there, you're dealing with patients.
Yes.
And if you get things wrong, there could be dire consequences. In our world of selling cars, if we get things wrong, we don't hit budget. Okay, if we get things wrong, it doesn't matter there. Okay, so many times you're dealing with someone else and you're trying to help them. So the question I'm asking is, what advice do you have for that sales manager, that service manager that's got someone in their team that they need to help? They can see that their mindset's not right. What can they do to help that person get them into that right mindset? And I suppose I'm driving back to your medical past, because you must have had to help people to get them the right mindset. What could that manager do to help get that mindset in their team?
Yeah, it's really important. When I'm hearing this a lot, Simon, from managers, this exact question that you ask is that I've got someone on my team, I've got some people on my team, I need to lift their attitude. I want to see them lift their attitude, lift their belief level, lift their expectation level, so they can mobilize more. And the good news is you can do something about that. But quick anecdote from my line of work in the clinical world. So as a clinically practicing psychiatrist, when I was doing that, you know, we'd have a weekly meeting with a variety of staff members, so nurses and psychologists, and we'd all be talking about our cases that we're working with. If you think about it, in mental health, it's difficult stuff that we're bringing to these meetings. You know, we've got patients that are more depressed than ever. We've got patients that are not eating, so that's a really dangerous situation to be in. We've got patients that are suicidal, or patients that are hearing voices, distress, running away, things like that. And so, can you imagine that? That's our 90-minute discussion meeting. There's all we're doing is talking about, I'm stuck. How do we make this better? How do we, you know? So it's
How do you not get into that environment yourself as a practitioner?
Yeah. So, I mean, okay.
Sorry, that's another question there, but it must be an issue.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that it's a constant battle. I don't know if we are ever completely immune. I think that, you know, sometimes there are times where actually you're able to create that psychic distance, as it were, that mental space, whereby I can help, I can serve, I can diagnose, I can treat. And at the same time, their emotional predicament isn't going to overwhelm me and then derail me and then ultimately stop me from serving them well. So there's a lot going on there. But what I was going to say with regards to the team was that I felt it was really important for us at the beginning of every meeting to focus on what went well. So we would talk about in the last week, what's gone well for you with any of your patients, with anything that's happened outside of work, because I think it's so important that we train the CEO of our brain behind our forehead to be able to hunt for good data. So, going back to your question about the manager, who wants to help shift behavior and thinking in the team, one tool is having a what went well huddle, and just keeping that in the life of the team. A what went well huddle. It's the end of the week. One thing that went well, let's go around the group, 90 seconds, go. And people practice this.
See, I love that, because so many sales meetings, I have walked out of a sales meeting more depressed before I went in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it starts right at the beginning of the day. And it's like, well, that went wrong and you didn't move that car back there. And that one failed on finance. And you just see this. And that's why I said that transference. Okay.
Yes.
Actually, even as a manager, I've had my whole sales team nag me out saying, that car's too expensive. Okay. We'll never sell that car. And actually, it's that negative thing. I love that tool there. What went well? What went well? Okay.
Yeah, it's such a simple question to ask. And I often say this when I'm working with teams in automotive. I often work with senior leadership teams. I give them this example. If you ask a kid, how was school today? What do you get from them? Shrug their shoulders. Fine. What did you do at school today? Nothing, right? That's the answer you get. Shrug shoulders, right? If you ask them, and as I did my young kid today, what went well today? You get a different answer, because you're forcing the CEO of the brain to hunt for good data. Not a problem, not a crisis, not a complaint, not a worry, not a loss, but something good. It doesn't mean we ignore opportunities missed. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means we keep the CEO trained. Those neural pathways, your brain's neuroplastic. You want to train your brain to be able to hunt for what goes well. So that's one tip, Simon. But can I give you another top tip for
please.
Listening in? There's something called the Pygmalion effect and the Golem effect. The Pygmalion effect describes the performance in someone that you lead or manage dependent on the level of expectation you have on that person. So let's say you're a teacher and you believe that little Jemima is great at maths, and you've seen it before, and you think, okay, she's learning, she makes a few mistakes, but you think, oh, you know what? She's just progressive. And then she sits the test and she comes back from that test, and you say something to her like, oh, I knew you were going to do that well. I knew you were going to get a great mark there. That's a healthy level of high expectation. What we know is that when we have a high level of expectation of someone we lead, parent, teach, we can actually see an improvement in their grades. That's improvement in their performance. Okay. And it comes from the mythological story of this chap called Pygmalion, who was chiseling a statue away, an inanimate statue of a woman who he thought was so beautiful. He literally made the statue started to come alive according to what he was seeing in his mind. Okay, so that's the mythological story, but the science shows that it happens. The Golem effect is the opposite, Simon. The Golem effect is if I have a low level of expectation on little Jemima wasn't going to do well on that test. How much did she get? Oh, she got 95%. See, she got 5% wrong. So and so got 96. If we have this constant low level of expectation of little Jemima, what we end up seeing is we crush their performance. Their performance and grades go down. So now we turn this back to the manager. We go, you know what? There's a lot that your guys and girls can do to improve their performance and mindset, but you also have some keys. You're not completely disabled. You can actually start to make some tweaks by shifting your life, making sure you don't become the wicked, evil stepmother in Rapunzel. That you know what I mean, or that super critical, hostile, cold and frosty. Because we're humans at the end of the day. We want to make sure that we're keeping expectation high.
It's so true. In the motor trade, I know that so many times we're guilty of saying, well, that was wrong, and that was wrong, and that was wrong, and that was wrong. And we keep on telling them everything that was wrong there. And that's the expectations. Not like, that did well. I think it was Kenneth Blanchard wrote in his book, The 1 Minute Manager. He said, what we do as management, sometimes it's a game of 10-pin bowling. Okay. We throw the ball down, and you see the pins go down. You got a result, but what happens is, definitely in the motor trade, we put a sheet in between the pins and the person bowling. So they throw the ball down. I know I got a result there, but I don't know what it is. okay? And then what we do is we put a manager on the other side of the sheet. We throw the balls down, okay? They hear the ting, and the manager says on the other side, you got 6. I always have a laugh about that. No, in the motor trade, we say, you missed 4.
Yeah.
What happened? You missed 4.
Simon, why does this happen? What's your thoughts on this?
Listen, I want to ask you, you're the person who's been to medical school. I hope that. I hope you can tell me, why do we always look for what we missed out on? Is it a human trait there? Do we want more as humans?
Well, let's go back to an example we're very familiar with. You and I are both parents. And so when we were thinking about our kids walking for the first time, learning to walk, every time, little baby gets up, they're surfing on the couch and then they fall on their big spongy backside. What do we go? Oh, wow! Yay! You're doing amazing! Try again. You try again, they fall over. Oh, that was such an amazing fall. You're doing so well. And it's with that leadership that they one day start to walk. And isn't it interesting that there comes a time when we switch from that mode into, you missed 4.
Isn't so true.
But here's, go on.
I was going to say, but in the motor trade, I don't know if it's just our industry. I've only worked in the motor trade.
Yeah.
But listen, sometimes it's like our managers, they'll turn around and say to your young child, okay, you've got 3 children, turn around and say, can you not see everyone else can walk in the family except for you? Okay, listen, I'll show you one more time. It's not that hard. In fact, your sister, she was actually walking when she was 11 months. And listen, you're 11 and a half months. So listen, I'll show you one last time. If you can't do it, we're going to sell you on eBay. You wouldn't do that with a kid learning to walk. You'd never do it.
No, exactly. And so let me give you an example from the medical sphere then. So when I was a junior doctor, okay, so I've done 5 years of medical school, and I rock up to the ward as an intern, as I guess was the phraseology back then. And when the big boss consultant that everyone follows around goes from, patient bedside to patient bedside to patient bedside, old school guy asks me, have you got the X-ray ordered? Have you done the blood? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? The number of mistakes that I made because I was afraid in my interaction with this person spoke for itself. Right. And what we know is when we study this, and actually medical culture's changed, when we studied this, the level of criticism, hostility, and fear is related to a poorer delivery of service, more patient errors, misidentifications, prescription errors, things like that, dropping the ball left, right, and center. I find it hard to believe that doesn't translate across industries. You know what I mean?
It's exactly that. So many times I see managers, I was guilty of it. Turn around and say, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you do it this way, you do that. The poor people, brand new, they don't want to act for fear. Every time I do it, I get it wrong anyway. So why do we do that? It definitely transfers across. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.